Welcome to Victim Justice Unveiled, a space where truth is honored, resilience is amplified, and justice is reimagined. Here, survivors, families, advocates, and system leaders come together to navigate the complex path of healing, accountability, and reform. Whether you're watching or listening, thank you for joining us in this journey where voices are uplifted and change begins. I'm your host, Tamara Musolino. Let's begin. Before we begin, a note. This first episode is deeply personal. Dawn and Lynnette Vanderschoot share their story of their daughter, Justine, the story that inspired this podcast. We honor their courage, and we invite you to listen with care. Hey, Lynnette.
Tamara,
How are you?
good. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you. At the first ever Victim Justice Unveiled podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Dawn and Lynnette Vanderschoot are not just the parents of Justine. They're the heartbeat behind every conversation we have on this podcast. In the wake of the devastating loss, they chose advocacy over silence, education over isolation, and justice over despair. Their courage lit the foundation for Victim Justice Unveiled. And today, we honor their legacy by hearing directly from them. This episode isn't just about what happened to you and to Justine. It's about what came after. The long road of grief, the fight for accountability, and the quiet, persistent work of changing a system that too often fails victims and their families. Lynnette, thank you for being here and allowing us to walk beside you in this story.
Thank you for having me.
Back in, I think, it's before the first parole hearing, or that was the catalyst.
2017.
That was the catalyst of our initial communication. You came into the office, you had gotten notification about the parole hearing for Brandon Fernandez, and I ended up being the assigned advocate for you.
Yep.
For that process.
I've been with this since day one.
At the very first parole hearing. So I want to kind of go through some of the laws that have changed the trajectory of the sentencing that took place and go over where you started with finding out Justine was missing to where we are today. Highlight for the audience that maybe doesn't know the story, hasn't watched the 48-hour segment, which, by the way, is a very good segment, and does go into detail and good information. But we just start with some of the reforms that have changed and bringing you here, changing the trajectory of what you thought was going to be a time where you could have peace and healing, to a time where it's become court hearing after court hearing. Some of the reforms that took place, the key milestones in hearings. September 1st, 2003, Justine went missing.
Correct.
And do you want to tell me a little bit about that, what that looked like for you?
We went to bed. Justine was on the phone talking to her boyfriend, Danny. And I told her, don't talk too long. She got work the next day. When I got up the next morning, early in the morning, I think I was leaving about 5 in the morning. I walked outside, noticed her truck was missing. I went back into her room. I found her puppy on the bed, but she was not there. I know her and Danny had been having problems, so I thought she went over to his house and fell asleep and would come back home. I left her a message to call me. I heard nothing. It wasn't until maybe 1:30 in the afternoon that I get a call from Danny, her boyfriend, and he asked if I knew where Justine was. And I said, what do you mean? She was at your house last night. And he said, I never saw her last night. That would have been the only place she would have gone when she left the house, knowing she was going to come back. And right there was the first red flag that came up. I knew something was wrong. And then he said, I took her lunch and she wasn't at work today. And he never paid for anything, brought her lunch. So that was the second morning. So I called Dawn right away and I said, something's wrong. When I left for work this morning, Justine her truck was not there. Danny just called, said he didn't see her last night. He went to her work, she didn't go to work. So we met back at home and called the sheriff's department. They came over and said that she was missing. And their person was, oh, she probably just got mad at you, ran away. We're like, no, that's not Justine. But I could see it's a typical teenager. If they're missing, they ran away.
And for law enforcement, that's probably a place where it's not uncommon. So I imagine a lot of families probably go through that scene.
And that's usually the outcome. Yes, they ran away. They had a fight with their parents. So we just kept waiting day by day. I wasn't eating, I wasn't drinking, because I thought from day one, from that point, I knew Danny and Brandon were behind it. If they didn't have her, they knew who had her. My biggest thing was I thought they had her just stashed somewhere, showing up how big they were, and they had to listen to her. Never in my wildest dream did I think that they had actually murdered her that night. So we searched probably about 2.5 weeks looking for her. Before Placer County Sheriff's Department reached out to the FBI and said, we need your help. And they took Milton that night. Let's see, 17th or the 19th of September. And they ended up breaking Brandon. And he took them up to where they had buried her, very isolated, remote holes in the road, not a well-traveled place. And I get a call about 11:30 or 12 that night. Angela, our detective, said, can we come by? We have some more questions to talk to. I said, sure. Never in my wildest dreams would I think that what she was about to tell us would happen. She came in and said that Brandon had led them up to her body and that she was not coming home. So, I'm so sorry. That was very hard. At first, she was just like looking at me and shaking her head, and I thought, okay, she ran away, but at least she's going to be home. But nope, that wasn't the outcome. Sorry. Coming up on the 22nd anniversary, it's still hard. A lot of counseling, a lot of trying to help other people has helped us. We're Justine's voice now. She can't be here, but we are.
You guys have done amazing work with regard to that.
Trying, yes.
From the very beginning.
If we could just save one other life, it's all worth it.
Thank you for everything you're doing and have done.
Thank you for being by our side through all the parole hearings, 2 trials. It's crazy. I thought I'd never be attending a parole hearing alone. Going on December 18th, just around the corner.
An advanced one.
An advanced one, yes. It's not supposed to be till 2027 for Danny. Danny petitioned to have it earlier, and he was granted it. It seems like they have more rights than the victims.
Part of what I wanted to highlight for our audience is the changes in the laws.
Yes.
You know, when Daniel Besmer and Brandon Fernandez were convicted, they not only accepted responsibility, they entered a plea agreement, meaning they agreed that what they had done and were convicted of what they had done to Justine. And each serving a different sentence. Besmer was convicted of first-degree murder and Fernandez of second-degree murder because of everything he did to help Besmer.
And we were told as probably far back as 9 months that they had been planning this before that night. They went as far as tapping our phone lines.
And that was back in 2003.
Yeah.
Who has the technology to do that in 2003? I mean, were cell
Brandon.
phones even that popular at that time?
Brandon Fernandez was a tech-savvy guy. He got in trouble in high school for changing grades for people. So he's very, very knowledgeable of it. He's a lot behind it.
Going back to milestones in the sentence, all of what you've had to go through since Justine murder by Brandon and Daniel. Justine disappeared September 1st of 2003. In March, they were both sentenced. Your advocate was a different advocate at that time.
Yes.
Who later retired. I should have.
And we were very fortunate.
Honored to be a the sentencing took place, but then in October of 2017, AB 1308 was enacted, which raised the youthful offender age. In essence, would allow both of the perpetrators of Justine's murder earlier access to parole dates. potential parole hearings,
Yes.
which led to September 1st,
12 years.
to the day that Justine went missing, ultimately murdered. You have to attend a parole hearing.
Yes, coming up with her death date as September 2nd. My question then was like, do we have to go through the parole hearings on every anniversary of her death? Or can they bop it like 6 months difference or something?
So being victim-centered, it doesn't seem like that's something that the system is truly grasping still to this day.
It's hard to have it on the anniversary date of when she went missing. It's hard enough going to the parole hearings, but with it being on the anniversary date makes it even harder. Your emotions are just out of whack. Just the memories and stuff.
And then came another change in the law. For the audience, it's important to note that these laws that I'm speaking of are all retroactive. They will be on the webpage. Make sure that you can view them and have access to them as well. The next law that was changed that made a difference in your journey, Besner, Fernandez, specifically Fernandez in this one,
Correct.
called the felony murder rule. And what that ultimately does is anyone who was an accomplice in a murder has the ability to petition the court and ask for a retrial so that their sentence could be shifted from murder to something of a lesser penalty. And Fernandez took advantage of that new law.
Sure did.
And that thrust you guys into court in 2020 during the height of the pandemic.
And it was our first child 17 years after the fact that we had lost Justine, which I just think is crazy. You have 17 years, we're just trying to cope with everything, trying to be there for our other daughter, Christine, and then have to have this dragged up again.
I think it's also important to note that you're doing this resentencing. There was a plea agreement, so there wasn't ever any evidence produced prior to this.
Correct.
There wasn't any witness testimony. There wasn't anything truly in court as far as evidence presented.
Yeah, no evidence presented to us of
how.
Yeah, how. And to this day, they still are not truthful with that whole night, what happened. I know there's a lot of torturing. He was buried alive.
So you had to sit through and relive that experience all over again.
Yeah.
One of the things that I took away from that at Placer County is how incredible it was 17 years. Something along that line. Placer County was able to locate many of the witnesses that had come forward during the investigation, and they were able to testify at the resentencing, which ultimately turned out to be a trial because, again, evidence had been presented before. So it was something that needed to be done in order to uphold the original conviction of second-degree murder. But how does that make you feel about your community, knowing that your community was still present and still vigilant and still there to help you?
They're still, it's amazing. The community, Placer County Sheriff's Department, Placer County District Attorney's Office, they've been behind us from day one. They have not forgotten Justine. They're there helping us through each step of the way. And our victim advocate, Ms. Stanworth. She's amazing.
Not about me today.
It was hard during the COVID because we had to be like 6 feet apart. We had a turnout and our friends and family had to rotate just to listen to parts of the trial. We couldn't sit next together.
Even you and Dawn.
Dawn and I, that we sleep in the same bed. We were like probably 6 or 8 feet apart. It was like two per row. Not even arm's length away. It was a lot of space in between.
And not a very big courtroom to begin with.
I know.
And then you had room. As the court is open to the public, the room had to be saved for others that wanted to watch as well, including Danny's family.
Yes.
Who would show up and take
2 and 3 seats from our support system that was there for us.
I'm sure that was another hurdle, another challenge that you guys have faced, but you did it with dignity and grace. That's all.
And Brandon wasn't present at that trial either. It's through Zoom. Danny was present, so it was hard seeing him 17 years later in person in the same room as we were.
How did it make you feel when you knew that Fernandez had actually petitioned the court for this resentencing, but then chose not to come physically to the courtroom, but to appear remotely. Meanwhile, you and your family and your supporter all in court.
We have to get up, get ready, drive to the courthouse. Instead of just go for ourselves to the little room that they put him in. It's unjust, especially since he's the one putting us through the trial, but he wasn't there.
And you requested it, and he didn't show up.
And I think it's because he knows he can't control his emotions or actions. He doesn't want the judge to see that. I mean, even with the Zoom, you can see some of his gestures and mouthing what he would do. But he needs to be present. We have to be there. Why can't he be there?
So then we fast forward to your second parole hearing 2 years later, in July of 22.
For Brandon.
Fernandez again. That he was denied parole again, thankfully.
Yes.
And then we fast forward to a month later, where
He was so close together.
Daniel Bessemer's first parole hearing in August of 22. And that parole hearing was unique in a lot of ways, but I can think of one particular statement that he made during that hearing that I think shocked everyone in the room.
Yes.
Do you remember what he said?
He said if he didn't murder Justine that night, but then the following 10 years, he probably would have murdered somebody else. If it wasn't for her, it would have been somebody else. But let's let him out, right?
How scary is that? And so at that time, the parole board denied his request for 3 years. But then we discovered that
After sitting there for 6 hours, of how innocent, or he didn't do this, didn't do that.
I think that's a good point to bring up to the audience too, and that parole hearings start out about the inmate, because what the parole board oftentimes says is that they need to hear what the inmate has done since they've been incarcerated.
They've been such a good role model, and is that a reason to let them out earlier? Which, you can just do that to get out and then turn around and be the same person you were when you went in.
Well, I think I remember the parole board actually stating to Bessemer that he did a really good job of reciting verbatim what the book said in his classes. But it sounded like he had a difficult time actually putting it into practice with how he's changed.
Yes.
So his books weren't.
He's dotting all those I's, crossing all of his T's to try to get out. Because he's a different person now. Both of them claim they are. Which, I don't care how many years you're in there, you're still the same person.
So to our surprise, we learn
Big surprise.
the hearing was not recorded. And therefore, legally, the California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation, CDCR, had to give him another hearing. So he got a redo of his first parole hearing.
Anything that can go wrong with our case has gone wrong. This was another thing. So after sitting there 6 hours or more and pouring out your emotions at the end, only to be told, we don't think it recorded. And my heart just dropped. It's like, what do you mean? You didn't notice it at the beginning of the morning when they were having problems, and then they continued through.
That's frustrating for me, and I'm not even I'm there supporting you, so I can't even imagine what that felt like for you, Dawn and Christine, hearing those words, and how do you not record something so critical and so important?
It's like you should almost have like a stenographer. Like when you're in court, they have one. There should be one present for this exact reason. Okay, the audio was lost, so we had to redo it again with Was it a month or two later that we had to redo it again?
His first one was denied. Didn't third were in August of 22, March of 20. He had a second, his redo parole hearing, where he was denied for 5 years.
Yes. And the first one, I can remember the two commissioners said that the first one where they lost audio gave him only 3 years to come back. But then when they redid it, they said, oh, it's 5 years. So it kind of hit him. And
Kind of
you know
seemed,
what?
at least it seemed like it was
It
working
did. Yes, against him.
against him.
Yes. Until a couple months ago, we got a letter saying that he had petitioned for an earlier parole hearing. And we found out a couple weeks later it was granted. So then now we have to do it December 18th of this year. Merry Christmas to us, right?
Another thing to look forward to.
Mm-hmm. Just seems like they have more rights than the victims and the family.
So after the March hearing in 2023, where he was denied for 5 years, you then get notification about Brandon Fernandez's first resentencing hearing, and that she was coming back for a second
Yes.
hearing. Brandon Fernandez ended up with a second trial.
So we went 2020 and then 2024 and sit through a couple weeks of that.
And again,
Thank God he was denied again. That was our biggest fear. That was, with all the laws that changed, that there was a chance he could get out. But I believe the judge saw through him. And he was requested by the judge to be on that trial also. And he opted out to coming to the trial, which if the judge says you need to be in the courtroom, I don't understand why he was not in the courtroom. Dan was there again in the courtroom during the trial for the second time.
Fernandez was able to appear yet again by
Zoom. Yeah. It's like if you're making us be there in the courtroom, he should be in the courtroom.
This time, thankfully, you didn't have social distancing.
Yes.
So you were
Yeah,
able
we
to
filled the courtroom again.
friends and family. Yep. Your support system there with you.
Mm-hmm.
How does that make you feel? 20 22 years later? 20 years later,
Yeah.
roughly, that we still
have our support system. It's amazing. The community's out for it. And when it comes up for parole hearing and we try to get the petition signed, the amount of people that sign the petition to keep them, both of them behind bars is amazing.
yes, kudos to Christine on that.
Yes,
because
she does a great job
she did
getting it out
amazing.
there.
Yes. I think the first petition I had looked up that she created, and I'll post that as well if that's okay with Christine. I'll add that to the podcast notes so that audience can have that. I think it was over 22,000 signatures
Yes.
to keep Brandon Fernandez in custody.
Yes. She did an awesome job.
I think that's something that is important for the audience to understand. And there are other people out there going through the trauma that you guys have gone through and feel helpless or feel like they can't do anything. Take initiative. Christine was able to do this incredible feat. You guys have done so many things when it comes to advocacy work. And we'll get into that a little bit more later. Just finish up with the timeline of the hearings and things. Fernandez's second hearing, a judge affirmed his guilt. On August 1st of 2024, Fernandez's second resentencing hearing, the judge affirmed his guilt.
Yes.
For second-degree murder. That was Judge Jones.
Thank good the way it started out talking about how the laws have changed. And Christine and I both held our breath because we thought he was going to say that he was going to let him go. And when at the end of an hour or so that he spoke, and that he actually said that he was not going anywhere, what a weight that was lifted off of our shoulders. And his mom and dad were there, Fernandez's parents, and they were kind of giggling, chatting through this trial. They didn't attend the first one. And when I think they honestly thought he was going to get out, which is crazy. They still to this day think he did nothing. And it was Justine's fault because she left our house that night. That's not the reason.
Victim blaming.
Yeah, it's her fault. Oh, she would have stayed home.
You would think in 2025, people would actually change and understand now that victim blaming is not okay.
And they were upset with the judges saying he was not going anywhere. They stood up and marched right out. And I was like, I think I'd leave too. Your son's guilty. He's not going anywhere. It's like when Justine can walk home, when she can come back home, then they can go back home. But they should never go anywhere but rot where they are. Sorry, but that's how I feel.
You don't need to be sorry. That's how you feel. You can own your feelings. It's okay. This will be Besmer's third parole hearing.
Correct. Like, what, a year and a half? 2 years earlier than should have been.
And it was scheduled to be.
And I still have no reasoning why they granted it to you.
And it sounds like inmates can just, if they want to change the way things are, they just request it, and I think it's reviewed, and in their case, ultimately, they get granted.
Yeah.
And it brings you guys back all over again.
Yes.
The system that you're trying to move away from.
Correct. Kind of try to let her life settle down a little bit. Because every time the trial happens or a parole hearing, it's like, it affects me like weeks in advance, and then it takes you, just the building up to it, and the nerves, and not being able to sleep or eat, and then it takes you a couple weeks to kind of start subsiding and trying to get back into normalcy again, which is, until you've been there, I guess you wouldn't really understand it, but it takes a lot of your emotions.
It takes a toll.
Yeah.
It takes a lot. What are some of the things that you do to help in navigating that process?
Try to breathe. I went to counseling for 7 years after I lost her. It affected me a lot. Thank God Dawn was strong for Christine and I. There's a lot of people that we've met through the years, and they've lost a loved one, a child or something. Not necessarily murder, but everyone that we've met, they've all been divorced. But Dawn and I are still together, going strong. Christine's my rock. Our big rocks.
Is the rock for her band.
Yeah.
That's something that a lot of people may not have.
Yes.
So I'm glad that you guys have that.
A lot of them can't handle it. They just drift in different ways.
It's tough because there isn't a playbook out there on how to deal with grief and how to navigate the criminal justice system that keeps reopening your wounds over and over and over.
Yeah, and everybody grieves differently. Mine was, I wanted her picture staying up. He had to look every morning in the living room at her pictures, but I didn't want to take them down because I wanted her to still be part of the family. She is with us. They recommended cremating her, so she's in our living room with us, celebrating all holidays, and we walked to her. She's with us.
We have Daniel Besmer, December 18th of 2025, which will be his third parole hearing. It could advance a couple of years.
Yeah.
And then in July of 27, it looks like Fernandez is going to be eligible again. So with the way things stand today, you'll have a hearing in December. You'll have a 2-year time frame where you can not have to worry about the criminal justice process, hopefully. Nothing else changes.
Unless Fernandez does the same thing Besmer did. But it's just a continuous roller coaster, constantly, over and over and over. And like Dawn says, it's like every time this comes up, it's like ripping the Band-Aid off the wound. It just starts all over again.
So I'm going to take you back to something that I, and the audience probably is going to find relative, in that something that happened recently in the news, in the media. or the Menendez brothers who murdered their family members. A different story and scenario than what you have. But I think what's important to note is that the reason you've been notified about the upcoming hearings or the timing of those hearings is because you completed a form that California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation calls the 1707 form. It's a form that notifies you of any change in their custodial status or the petition for early release or early parole hearings. And so, watching the Menendez brothers on the news, I started to think, having been the advocate that would call family members and let them know about the retroactive changes in the law, it's never fun to break that news to someone about retroactive changes in the law. But it made me think that when they were sentenced to life without the possibility of parole, meaning they would never have a parole hearing. So if they were never going to have a parole hearing, what would be the purpose of a family member in a situation similar to that to actually complete that 1707 form?
To be notified
To be notified of their parole hearing. They could still be notified of where they are, but having worked with a lot of families, I can think of one in particular that I worked with, that person was sentenced to death, but I still, I think I ultimately filled out the form for the family member and had them review it and sign it and send it in for them. Had I not done that, they would not get notifications of changes where they are in the system, or if there were any retroactive changes in the law, allowing them to now petition for things like Fernandez was able to petition for the resentencing of his conviction.
Correct.
So what would you say to families out there who maybe have someone in a situation like the Menendez brothers where their perpetrator of crime was convicted of a crime that had a sentence that wasn't a shoot life sentence, but a life without the possibility of parole sentence? What would you say to them about being able to be notified? Having lived through the retroactive law changes, what would you say to someone who didn't think they needed to fill out the form?
That you need to fill it out, because with California and all their laws that they change constantly, it may be too early. You get a letter saying, "Hey, we're going to release them. Oh, they've been such a great person and stand-up inmate and stuff like that." It's crazy that, because it doesn't necessarily happen the way the sentencing goes. And you would want to know, especially if they're going to release them.
Yeah.
You don't want to just walk down the street and see that they're out or something.
That ties into another thing that when I was in the DA's office before I retired, there were a couple of laws that passed, and one in particular pertains to that form, and it was SB 1267, and it would have required an automatic notification. So anyone who committed a crime involving a person, a serious crime, that the California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation would automatically reach out to that person and let them know if there were any changes that happened retroactively, and giving them the notification that the law has changed. There may be an early parole hearing, there may be something like that happening. And, it was exciting at first when we went to the Capitol and that bill was presented, because the Public Safety Committee loved the idea. But ultimately it ended up getting held in committee in May of 2024. Victims still have to opt in to being notified, instead of what that bill would have done, would have made it opt out.
Keep your information updated. I mean, we're still at the same house, but I know people move a lot, so you got to make it to where they can notify you. Keep your contact information up to date, I would suggest.
That's a really good point, because I recall vividly as an advocate calling people who I needed to notify that their office got the notification from the CDCR that these people were being released. There were mass releases during COVID, and one of my responsibilities is trying to reach out to people and let them know. Some of the cases I had were so old that the contact information that was given to us were personal pagers.
Back in the day, yeah.
Obviously, I didn't reach them.
Yeah.
But, I tried what I could do as far as reaching out by using means of, our investigators, thankfully. I had investigators that would actually try and find an updated address, and then we would mail notifications to them to alert them this is happening. But I'll also put that link to the 1707 form along with this podcast resources so that people can fill out that form. I want to just go ahead and recap the ones that directly affect Justine's case.
Yes.
The first is SB 1437, felony murder reform, and the author was Senator Nancy Skinner, and that was the one that allowed Fernandez to petition the court for his sentence to be changed from second-degree murder to a lesser.
We were like, I think, the third case in California.
Yeah.
Once that, it was so new. But Brandon's like, he's on top of it. Yeah, researching all the time. Any loophole to try to get out.
Despite accepting a plea agreement.
Mm-hmm.
Then in 2019, SB 136, this is I'm not that familiar with. SB 136, the author, Senator Scott Lee, who repealed automatic sentence enhancements for prior nonviolent convictions. I think it would be interesting for the audience to read these and look into them and see who's putting this information, who's changing the laws, and what's actually happening. Because unless you live through it, like you have, you probably aren't really paying that much attention to what our legislature's doing.
Because when you're voting, you're not, they say one thing, but if you read the fine print, it's saying
just
differently. Yeah.
But you also trust who you're putting in office to do what's right for you.
Yes.
So I think it's important to look at that. 2021 SB 483, which is a retroactive resentencing. That author was Senator Ben Allen. Allows for no prior enhancements retroactive, something that Fernandez would have been able to take advantage of.
I didn't know it was wrong to murder somebody. Just crazy,
I think you learn before you go to kindergarten what is wrong, what's the truth, and what's a lie. So maybe talk a little bit about the support piece of advocacy, Justine's legacy, what you and Donna and Christine have been doing. I'd like to end with some empowerment for our listeners, and that some takeaways that you guys have, having walked this experience already. And so, for grief to advocacy.
So probably a couple years after she had passed, we did 5-6 fundraisers. We ended after, I think, just before COVID. It was just so hard to get going again. But we raised money to give back to the 4 organizations that helped us: the County Sheriff's Department, Pastor Tay's office, Victims of Violent Crime, and the chaplaincy. The chaplaincy for that night when the sheriff, our detective, came to tell us Justine was not coming home. She already had a chaplain lined up. He was outside, and I think he sat up with us for like till 3 in the morning, making coffee. He was back the very next morning, which they go way above and beyond to be there to help support the victims, which we had never been through. Court system, the jail, any of the Sheriff's Department, we had never been involved. They were all there for us. So we raised quite a bit of money and divided it between the 4 groups. And then with some of that money, we put together some books. Patsy Fletcher, our first victim advocate lady before Tamara, she found these books that we promoted. She designed the cover, Justine's story, and on the back is her picture. And then on this card, she recommended and had all the phone numbers and addresses for teenage pregnancy, a teen clinic, youth crisis, where kids. And she said this way, with girls who are in a domestic abusive relationship, they could hide it in their sock because they don't want to have the book. But it has all, is it really love? And it just talks about different things. And I've had several people throughout the years come up to me after we put these through all the high school, the junior high schools. I mean, it was a family event. We would assemble these books on our kitchen table up at the cabin, put the cards in. I don't know how many thousands that we put together. But I'd have people come up to me on the street and say, hey, I just want to let you know that book helped my sister, helped a friend get out of an abusive situation. And it's just amazing that, that made it all worth it, that we did help people get out of a bad situation.
I think that's incredible, and I think that ties into something I do want to talk to you about a little bit. We'll talk to Dawn about it as well, but it is what we dubbed Justine's Law, and it's near and dear to your heart. And it's something that actually I was fortunate to have a mentor. And when I first started my career as a paralegal in San Joaquin County, Suzanne Schultz, who was my boss, my mentor, and she was already out in schools and meeting with at-risk youth and talking about what the signs were for domestic violence. And she took it beyond and created a video, and it was called "The Choice Is Yours." And she gave examples of cases that had come from our county. At that point in time, it was San Joaquin County where I was working, and shared with individuals what domestic violence looks like, what can happen if you're a victim of domestic violence, but also if you're the person committing the domestic violence, what that looks like. And so I felt so blessed to have her as a mentor when I started out, because I think she set the table for my career moving forward and just advocacy work. And I think it was just really important to get that message out and take that and fast forward to Placer County, where you were able to get Justine's Law, as we dubbed it,
Yes.
called, through the help of the author, Josh Hoover, and it was sponsored by the Placer County District Attorney's Office. Just to thank specifically Stephanie Herrera for her work in that creation. She's done phenomenal work with the District Attorney's Office here in Placer County to create awareness and provide a platform for so many issues. I was honored to have worked alongside of her as well.
She's an amazing person. She is.
So you invited me to come to your first presentation of Justine's Law, which was held at Granby High School, where you presented, and hopefully you guys will be presenting many, many, many more.
I hear we will be doing 3 in October in the Rockland area.
Wonderful.
And in February is teen dating violence. And I think they've already got some more high schools lined up that we can go and speak. Because at the time when it happened, we didn't realize signs that now looking back on it, what we noticed
Were actually signs of
were signs of he was controlling her, not allowing her to hang out with her friends. She had to stay home while he was working. And she was Miss Cheerleader, goalie for soccer, pitcher for softball. I mean, that girl never stayed home. She was constantly on the go. I was running around everywhere. And that last summer, as I'd leave for work, she'd be sitting on the couch, just very quiet and not doing anything. I'd go, why don't you go see your friend? Why don't you go here, go there? No. Not knowing that it was Danny that was telling her she could go anywhere unless she was with him. And he had told the friends that are boys that, because we always hug everybody, hi, goodbye, and that's how my girls did too. And he said, do not hug Justine, don't let her hug you. But nobody came to us until after the fact. I mean, so now we're trying to say if you see signs too, you gotta, let somebody know.
share that information.
Yeah.
But also, what will happen if you are the perpetrator of that crime? If you're the person that commits that crime. I was fortunate to have a community in San Joaquin County where collaboration was a huge piece of that community. And I was able to get a judge, a probation officer, and myself to go out and present. And each one of us told the children or the at-risk youth what it would look like if you ended up in our world. If you were a victim, here are the things that you'd have to go through. But if you were the perpetrator of the crime, you would end up meeting the judge. You would end up meeting the probation officer, and explain the rules.
Accountable.
You will be held accountable. And there are consequences for actions.
Yes.
And so if you find yourself in those situations where you think you're going down that path, take a step back before it escalates to a point you can't undo.
Which you will do, yeah.
Yeah, I think you could do. So I'm I'm super excited to hear that. And October being Domestic Violence Awareness Month.
Yes.
Perfect month for that to happen. I'm really looking forward to hearing how that goes and see what's left for you in the future. I know that you also want to just highlight are part of the Empower and Resilience Project from the Foster County District Attorney's Office. You're still a part of the Foster Justice Foundation?
Dawn has stepped down. There's a lot been going on this year. But we were at the first, up at the state capitol last Wednesday, the first advocacy day for victims.
First Victim Advocacy Day?
Mm-hmm.
What was that?
We were in attendance. The room was full. It was amazing to hear some stories. We got to know, Dawn got to tell Justine's story to Joe Patterson, Assemblyman, letting him know how they do the laws and when they change the laws, how it affects the victims of the family of the victims.
Good. I hope that was
Just how
well
it
received.
traumatizes us. So it's just continually trying to be Justine's voice, trying to help educate other people. Like I said, even if it's one life we can save, it's all worth it.
What would you tell a family member who is going through this now that felt that maybe they didn't have what it takes to advocate, or that they didn't have this big outreach platform to advocate for their loved one or on behalf of their loved one? What would you say?
You're not alone. I mean, there's somebody out there to help you. I mean, if you have to look for it.
There are resources out there. There are
Resources,
groups
yes.
and advocacy groups that you can connect with.
There's more and more groups than when it happened with us. There wasn't books that you could read. You couldn't go online and do counseling or research different things. Now there's so many different books, different routes you can go that you could do from your own house. You don't even have to leave the house. Just the ENR, we have a lot of great books suggested. Empower Resilience group that we started with family members that have lost their children also. Some are from fentanyl. We have Debbie Boyd who lost Christy Wilson from Thunder Valley. When they were looking for her, I reached out to her, and we're very close now, and we talk. We do stuff together. She's also an ENR in the Plaster Foundation. But it was like I could actually say, I know what you're feeling. I know what you're going through. Her daughter's missing. The court system is just being able to say, I know how you understand or how you feel. We're there if you need a shoulder cry on or something. It's just, yes.
Maybe not exactly the same path, but you've been there. So there are resources for people to be able to support one another.
ENR is trying to get the word out there so it's easily, if you can get on a laptop or a computer or something, and you can research and say, oh, this is the direction I want to go. This is what I need help in. We're trying to put that all together.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for joining us on Victim Justice Unveiled, where truth is honored, voices are uplifted, and justice is reimagined. Justice isn't a verdict. It's a lived experience. If this episode moved you, share it. If it informed you, act on it. And if it reflected your truth, know that you're not alone. Together, we unveil the path toward change.